Half of Europe died without warning, without explanation, and without time for goodbyes. In only a few weeks, the familiar sound of cities faded, and what had once been daily routine turned into silence. People woke expecting an ordinary morning, and instead found empty streets, closed doors, and distant eyes. There was no visible enemy and no declared war, only the feeling that something unseen had chosen that place to act. What frightened people most was not death alone, but the complete absence of answers. Healers did not know what to say. Rulers did not know what to do. And ordinary people could only watch as normal life slipped away. To those who lived through it, it felt as if the world itself was ending, without meaning or warning. This was the beginning of the Great Plague, an event that did not only take millions of lives, but forever changed how humanity understood life, faith, and fear. History often speaks in dates and numbers, yet what truly defined that time was a constant sense of insecurity, as if the ground had been pulled away beneath an entire civilization. Before chaos fully arrived, Europe was already living in a fragile balance, even if few noticed it. Cities were growing too fast, with narrow streets, crowded homes, and little concern for cleanliness. Daily life was intense and noisy, filled with strong smells and constant movement. People shared small spaces with family members, animals, and goods, all mixed together in a rhythm that felt normal. Most believed illness was sent by divine will or caused by bad air, and almost no one imagined that simple daily habits could carry danger. Eating, working, trading, and sleeping happened without question. This way of life, so common and seemingly safe, created the perfect setting for things to slip out of control. It took only a small imbalance for everything to collapse. The question that lingers is simple and unsettling. How could such a confident and active world be brought down so quickly and so deeply? It was not invading armies or a devastating drought that changed everything, but something no one could see. As people followed their routines, a silent enemy drew closer without drawing attention. It made no noise, raised no suspicion, and respected no borders. The idea that an invisible threat could destroy entire communities was difficult to accept. Many believed they were safe simply because they lived quietly or far from conflict. Fear grew precisely because there was no clear pattern. In one home, everyone seemed well, while next door someone suddenly fell ill. This mystery deepened the feeling of helplessness. For the first time, European society faced a danger that could not be fought with strength, faith, or personal courage alone. It was a new kind of fear, quiet and persistent, spreading through minds as much as through streets. The illness did not move on foot, nor did it need soldiers to clear its path. It traveled alongside the progress of the age. Ships crossed seas carrying goods, spices, and fabrics, linking distant regions as never before. Those same routes that brought wealth and novelty also carried danger. Busy ports filled with people and quick exchanges became gateways for the outbreak. What once seemed far away arrived suddenly, without invitation. Cities received vague news of trouble elsewhere, but few took it seriously. Trade had never before delivered something so destructive. This web of connections, so valued at the time, revealed a darker side of medieval exchange. The world was far more connected than people realized, and that connection came at a terrible cost. When Europe finally understood what was happening, it was already too late. Entire cities changed their behavior in a matter of days. Markets emptied, places of worship fell silent, and the rhythm of daily life was broken. People who seemed healthy only days before became ill, creating fear and suspicion among neighbors. Panic spread faster than any explanation. Each new story reinforced the feeling that no one was truly safe. Families watched their homes turn into places of uncertainty, and the idea of normal life faded away. It was at this moment that the plague stopped being a distant rumor and became an undeniable reality. Europe had entered one of the most transformative and painful periods in its history. Before continuing, consider subscribing to the channel if you've stayed with this story so far. As fear took full hold, desperation began to shape human behavior. Entire families fled their homes at night, believing distance might bring safety. Some cities tried to shut themselves away, while others collapsed socially. Neighbors avoided one another, friends no longer recognized each other, and even long-standing bonds were tested. Trust, essential for community life, slowly disappeared. Many believed even a simple touch or closeness could bring danger. Faith deepened for some, while others began to question everything they once believed. Amid the chaos, stories emerged of people isolating completely, living in silence, waiting for time to solve what no one could understand. The plague did more than take lives. It revealed how deeply society depended on bonds that could unravel under extreme fear. Without scientific knowledge to explain what was happening, survival attempts relied on guesses, beliefs, and everyday observation. Some thought the air itself was poisoned and carried fragrant herbs wherever they went. Others trusted constant prayer or protective symbols. Strange masks appeared, not as true solutions, but as desperate efforts to regain control over the unseen. Yet among many wrong ideas, a few quietly worked. Avoiding contact, keeping distance, and limiting movement helped some communities more than others. Without realizing it, principles that would later become essential were being formed instinctively. Survival came to depend not only on faith or chance, but on practical changes in daily behavior. When the worst finally passed, the world left behind was profoundly changed. Fields stood empty, workshops were silent, and cities were marked by absence. The lack of workers transformed the value of human labor. Ordinary people gained bargaining power once unthinkable before the outbreak. Lords lost control, and old social structures began to weaken. Simple daily acts like farming, building, or selling took on new meaning. Life came to be seen as more fragile, yet more precious. The plague did not only reduce the population, it reshaped social and economic relationships. What once felt like a senseless tragedy began to create deep transformations, opening space for a less rigid and more questioning world. From suffering grew a need to better understand the world. The shared experience of the outbreak pushed some to observe reality more closely. Slowly, explanations based only on divine punishment began to be questioned. Curiosity gained strength, and the search for more rational answers increased. Changes in laws, healing practices, and city organization happened gradually. Pain forced humanity to learn. Small advances, barely visible at first, prepared the way for a new way of thinking. The Great Plague became a quiet turning point, pushing society toward ideas that valued observation, prevention, and knowledge. The outbreak ended, but its marks never fully disappeared. It left lessons that crossed centuries, reminding humanity that unseen threats can appear without warning. History shows that ignoring signs, underestimating risk, and trusting routine too blindly can lead to lasting consequences. Looking back, it becomes clear that moments of crisis also shape progress. This story is not only about loss, but about transformation. It shows how humanity, even when faced with overwhelming fear, finds ways to adapt, learn, and continue forward. Fear left traces that never appeared in official records, yet remained etched in human behavior. For years after the plague, many habits changed quietly. The way people greeted one another, how they lived, where they chose to settle, and how they viewed strangers all carried caution. Simple acts like entering a new town or sharing enclosed spaces were never seen the same way again. An invisible distrust emerged, passed down from a generation that learned how quickly normal life could vanish. At the same time, this shared trauma strengthened appreciation for the present. Gatherings, celebrations, and meetings gained deeper meaning, as if every moment needed to be fully lived. Daily life carried a silent urgency, a constant reminder that everything can change without warning. Over time, memory of the plague blended with stories, legends, and symbolic meaning. Paintings, accounts, and traditions tried to make sense of what had happened. For many, remembering was painful, yet forgetting felt dangerous. The outbreak became a lasting warning about human limits in the face of nature. Even centuries later, it continued to influence decisions about health, cities, and coexistence. The past made one thing clear: progress without care can bring unexpected consequences. When we revisit this history, we see it as not just a distant event, but a mirror. It reminds us that societies are fragile, yet resilient. Understanding this past helps us recognize signs, value knowledge, and reflect on how we choose to live together. If this kind of historical storytelling helps you see the past in a more human and meaningful way, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing in the comments what surprised you most about this story.